So what we're going to do now is we're going to start looking at the way in which the server-side portion of the QuoteServices case study is organized. And we're going to focus on the generic base classes or superclasses, if you're a Java-type person, that provide the foundation for all the different microservices we're going to implement. And this is just leveraging some clever refactoring techniques, which are summed up succinctly by the don't repeat yourself or dry principle, which says if you find yourself cutting and pasting and repeating the code, you're probably doing something wrong because you'll get yourself in trouble. And instead, you should step back and refactor your design to emphasize commonality. So in the spirit of commonality, we're going to define ourselves something called a base application. And this class, this base class, this superclass, will then be extended by the HandyApplication and the ZippyApplication, which are the two microservices we're implementing here. And as you can see, we do some fun stuff. We have a static method, which is going to take the class that we're using, like for example, ZippyApplication.class or HandyApplication.class. That's always what you do when you're dealing with spraying. And we extract the name from the class. So we use a little reflection magic to go and say, what's the name of this thing? So we can find out the name we're going to register with. And then we go ahead and actually make the Spring application builder and then do some other magic to get everything initialized properly. So that's just common code refactored, so we don't have to write that code multiple times. Let's do something similar for the BaseController. So remember, there's going to be some endpoints, get and post endpoints, that are defined here. And we're going to factor them up into a superclass we call the BaseController. And this class will also then be extended by the HandyController or the ZippyController. And let's take a look and see what we do here. And you can find the code down here at this link. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to end up auto-wiring the base service, which would be the Zippy service or the Handy service. So that's just good old Spring dependency injection, no real mystery there. We're just factoring this code up into a common superclass. And then we're going to go ahead and define some methods like getAllQuotes and search. And as you can see here, these methods have a couple of interesting things going on. First of which is they just forward to the service that we auto-wired. And then secondly, they have the appropriate annotations for either get mapping or post mapping. Get mapping being the one that just returns read-only style stuff like all the quotes that are available. And then one here, search, we're going to do that as a post mapping so we can send this list as a request body. And these are the strings that identify the route names. You've seen that a million times before. Here's request body. We're going to send this as a list that's going to be part of the post request. And the reason, of course, for doing that is we don't want to have to encode all those requests in the URL itself. So we put it in the body instead of having it somewhere else. You could argue, is this the appropriate use of post? Because we're really sort of just doing read-only things. I think the answer is yes, because nobody wants to encode that stuff in the URL every time. And then finally, this is the most interesting piece for my money. We are using generic types as the return type. And the reason for that is that we can actually design this in a way that would work correctly for different kinds of types, both classic Java types like lists of strings or lists of quotes or whatnot, as well as reactive types like a flux of quotes or a flux of strings or whatever. So that's just there to give ourselves some additional reusability down the road if we so desire. Let's take a look at the base service. So this is the interface that we're going to have generically, and both the Zippy service and the Handy service will implement this interface. That's kind of what a service does. And you can see here we have some methods, getAllQuotes, which are going to return all the quotes, postQuotes, and search. And as you might expect, these are going to be overridden and implemented in the subclasses. Once again, we have generic types, so we can work with either classic types like lists or reactive types like fluxes. And that's it. So this is all reusable code that makes our life a lot easier, because now when we get into the specific microservices that we're going to talk about, and we might talk about them now, we might talk about them next time, those specific microservices are going to reuse all of this code, thereby emphasizing commonality by having the reusable parts factored out, so you don't have to repeat ourselves as much, and then allowing variability through the use of subclassing. And this is really just good old object-oriented design 101, nothing particularly profound here. It just makes life a little bit easier if we refactor the code. So just this is sort of an additional benefit of thinking about things from a nice design perspective, even though it's not strictly necessary in order to be able to get the code to work in the context of Spring. Keep in mind, by the way, of course, that clients, in other words, end user clients, things like mobile devices, web browsers, they don't care how this code is structured. They just want to be able to get responses to requests. We, however, as implementers, actually care about this because it potentially makes our lives easier.